The little girl's fingers dug into Clara's worn dress like she was drowning. "Please, Daddy," Ruby sobbed, her small body trembling against the stranger she'd known for only 3 minutes. "Please don't send her away." Josiah Mercer stared at the woman standing in the snow, the wrong woman with the wrong face holding papers that bore another woman's name. "She ain't who I sent for," he said, his voice cold as the Montana wind. But Ruby wouldn't let go, and something in Clara's chest, long shattered, began to ache again. Y'all, if this story already has you hooked, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and follow Clara's journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing just how far our stories travel across this beautiful country. Montana Territory. November 1879. The stagecoach door swung open, and Clara May Hutchins stepped down into 6 inches of fresh snow. Her boots, worn thin from 3 years of kitchen work, soaked through immediately. She clutched her carpet bag against her chest and scanned the depot platform. One man stood waiting, tall, broad-shouldered, hat pulled low against the wind. He held a piece of paper in one gloved hand, a photograph she realized, and his eyes moved from the image to her face, then back to the image. His jaw tightened. "You ain't her," he said. Clara's stomach dropped. She'd prepared for this moment, rehearsed it on the train, on the stagecoach, in every sleepless hour since leaving Ohio. But hearing it spoken aloud in that flat, hard voice, it hit different than she'd imagined. "No, sir," she said quietly. "I ain't." The photograph. He held it up. A beautiful woman with dark curls and a confident smile stared back. "This is who I was expecting. Colleen Bryce. That the name you're using. My name is Clara May Hutchins." "That ain't the name on the letters." "No, sir, it ain't." He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the grief that lived behind his eyes. "You got about 30 seconds to explain yourself, Miss Hutchins, before I put you right back on that coach." Clara forced herself to meet his gaze. Colleen changed her mind 3 days before she was supposed to leave. Said Montana was too far, too cold, too... She hesitated. Too much wilderness for a woman like her. "And you just happened to be standing there with a packed bag." "I was staying at the same boarding house, the matchmaker Mrs. Pendleton. She came to me, said there was a man out west with a little girl, a man who needed someone right away. She said..." Clara's voice caught. "She said you were good, honest, that you'd treat a woman fair. So you took another woman's letters and another woman's photograph and got on a train to marry a man you never met." "I took a chance, Mr. Mercer. Same as you did when you wrote those letters." His eyes narrowed. "How'd you know my name?" "Mrs. Pendleton told me. She told me everything. Your wife passed 2 winters ago. Your daughter's name is Ruby. She's 5 years old, and she ain't spoken more than a dozen words since her mama died." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or anger. "You know a lot about a man you never met." "I know enough to know you ain't looking for a wife, Mr. Mercer. You're looking for someone to care for your girl." Clara lifted her chin. "I can do that." He stared at her for a long moment. The wind howled between them, driving snow sideways across the platform. Then he turned away. "Get back on the coach," he said. "There's one heading east tomorrow morning." "Mr. Mercer," I said, "get back on the coach." He was already walking toward a wagon hitched at the edge of the platform. Clara watched him go, her heart sinking into her frozen boots. This was it then. Another rejection. Another door slammed shut. She'd survived the orphanage. Survived 12 years of other people's kitchens, other people's families, other people's leftovers. Survived Henry Bartlett and his lying promises, his cowardice, his mother's cruelty. She could survive this too. But God, she was tired of surviving. She turned back toward the depot, toward the wooden bench where she'd wait out the night, and that's when she heard it. A small voice, high and thin, barely cutting through the wind. "Daddy?" Clara spun around. A little girl stood at the edge of the wagon. She wore a brown coat, too big for her small frame, and she clutched a ragged teddy bear against her chest. Her hair was the color of winter wheat, tangled and windblown, and her eyes were fixed on Clara. "Daddy, is that her? Is that the lady from the picture?" Josiah stopped walking. His shoulders tensed. "No, Ruby, that ain't her. The lady ain't coming." Ruby's face crumpled. "But you said you promised." "I know what I said. You said someone was coming to take care of me. You said I wouldn't have to be alone no more when you're working. You said—" "Ruby." His voice was sharp. Too sharp. The little girl flinched. Clara moved before she could stop herself. She crossed the platform snow crunching under her boots and knelt down in front of the child. "Hey there," she said softly. "What's your bear's name?" Ruby stared at her with wide, uncertain eyes. She pulled the bear tighter against her chest. "It's okay," Clara said. "I had a bear once too. His name was Button. Had one eye and half an ear, but I loved him something fierce." Ruby blinked. Her lips parted just slightly. "Daisy," she whispered. "What's that, sweetheart?" "Her name is Daisy. She was Mama's." Something cracked open in Clara's chest. She reached out slow and careful and touched the bear's worn paw. "Daisy's real pretty," she said. "I can tell she loves you." Ruby's chin trembled. "Mama gave her to me before she went to heaven." "That means Daisy's got a piece of your mama in her. Every time you hold her, your mama's holding you right back." The little girl stared at Clara for a long moment. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Clara's neck. Clara froze. The child's small body shook with silent sobs, her face buried in Clara's shoulder. Clara could feel the wetness of tears soaking through her worn traveling dress. Behind them, Josiah's boots crunched to a stop. "Ruby," he said, his voice strange and tight. "Ruby, come here." But Ruby didn't move. Her fingers dug into Clara's dress, gripping the fabric like she was afraid to let go. "Please, Daddy," she cried, the words muffled against Clara's shoulder. "Please don't send her away." Josiah said nothing. Clara looked up at him, still kneeling in the snow, his daughter wrapped around her like a lifeline. His face was unreadable. "She ain't the one I sent for," he said finally. "I know. I don't know nothing about you." "No, sir, you don't. You could be anybody. You could be running from something. You could be—" "I could be—" Clara agreed. "But I ain't. I'm just a woman who's got nowhere else to go and nothing to offer except hard work and honest care." Ruby lifted her head. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "Daddy," she said, "she smells like Mama used to." Josiah's breath caught. His whole body went rigid. "What did you say?" "Like bread," Ruby whispered. "Like when Mama used to make bread in the morning. She smells like that." Clara's heart stuttered. She'd spent 3 years cooking in boarding house kitchens. Flour and yeast and butter had seeped into her very skin. She hadn't thought Josiah's hand moved to his face. He rubbed his eyes hard, his jaw working. "1 month," he said roughly. Clara blinked. "Sir, 1 month. You stay for 1 month. You take care of Ruby, keep the house, cook the meals. If it don't work out, I'll leave. No argument." He stared at her, searching her face for something. Lies, maybe, or the kind of softness that wouldn't survive a Montana winter. "I ain't offering marriage," he said bluntly. "Not now. Maybe not ever. You understand that. I understand. You'll have your own room, your own space. I won't—" He stopped, the words catching. "I ain't looking for that kind of arrangement. Neither am I, Mr. Mercer." He nodded once, sharp and final. Then he turned and walked back to the wagon. "Well," he called over his shoulder, "you coming or not?" "Dying. The ride to the Mercer homestead took 2 hours. 2 hours of frozen silence broken only by the creak of wagon wheels and the whistle of wind across the plains. Ruby sat pressed against Clara's side, her small hand wrapped around Clara's fingers. Daisy, the bear, clutched in her other arm. Josiah sat up front, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the road ahead. He didn't look back, not once. Clara studied the landscape as it rolled past. Snow-covered fields stretching to the horizon, dark pine forests climbing distant hills, mountains rising in the west, their peaks lost in gray clouds. It was beautiful, she supposed, in a harsh, unforgiving way. "You ever seen mountains before?" Ruby asked quietly. "No, sweetheart, I ain't. Mama used to say they were God's way of reminding us how small we are." Ruby paused. "Do you believe in God, Miss Clara?" Clara hesitated. She'd spent too many years in the orphanage chapel, praying for a family that never came to believe in a God who answered prayers. But looking at this little girl with her mother's bear and her father's grief, she couldn't bring herself to say no. "I reckon I believe in something," she said carefully. "I ain't always sure what to call it." Ruby nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "Daddy don't believe no more. Not since Mama went away. He used to pray with me at night, but he stopped." Clara's chest tightened. Sometimes people stop talking to God when they're hurting real bad. Doesn't mean they stopped believing. Just means they forgot how to find the words. "You think he'll remember someday?" "I think." Clara looked at the back of Josiah's head at the rigid line of his shoulders. "I think he's trying, in his own way." Ruby leaned her head against Clara's arm. "I'm glad you came, Miss Clara, even if you ain't the lady from the picture." "I'm glad too, sweetheart." The homestead appeared as the sun began its descent. A sturdy log cabin nestled in a grove of pine smoke curling from the chimney. A large barn stood nearby, and beyond it, a corral where 3 horses huddled against the wind. Josiah pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down without a word. He moved to the back, grabbed Clara's carpet bag before she could reach for it, and headed toward the cabin. "Come on," he said. "Getting cold." Ruby scrambled down and grabbed Clara's hand. "I'll show you the house. Daddy built it himself before I was born. Mama helped with the windows." The cabin was small, but well made. One main room served as kitchen and living space with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. 2 doors led to what Clara assumed were bedrooms. The furniture was simple, a rough-hewn table, 4 chairs, a rocking chair by the fire. Everything was clean, but there was an emptiness to it. A silence that felt like something was missing. "This way," Ruby said, tugging her toward one of the doors. "This is your room. It used to be the storage room, but Daddy fixed it up." The room was barely bigger than a closet. A narrow bed, a small chest of drawers, a window that looked out toward the mountains. But it was clean, and the quilt on the bed looked handmade. "Daddy's room is next to this one," Ruby said. "And I sleep in the loft." She pointed toward a ladder in the main room. "You can see the whole house from up there." "It's real nice, Ruby. Thank you for showing me." The little girl beamed the first real smile Clara had seen from her. Josiah appeared in the doorway. "Supper's in an hour. There's salt pork and beans in the larder. Bread's 3 days old, but it'll do if you toast it. I'll manage, Mr. Mercer." He nodded curtly and turned to leave. "Mr. Mercer." He stopped. "Thank you for giving me a chance." His back was to her so she couldn't see his face, but she heard him exhale long and slow. "Don't thank me yet, Miss Hutchins. Montana winters have broke stronger women than you." Then he was gone. Clara learned the rhythms of the Mercer homestead quickly. Josiah rose before dawn to tend the livestock, 3 horses, a dozen cattle, a handful of chickens that had to be dug out of snowdrifts every morning. He returned for breakfast, ate in silence, then went out again. Fence repairs, firewood, checking on cattle in the far pastures. He worked like a man trying to outrun something. Clara worked too. She scrubbed the cabin from top to bottom, washed clothes that hadn't been properly cleaned in months, restocked the larder from the supplies Josiah had brought from town. She cooked meals simple at first, then more elaborate as she learned where everything was kept. But mostly she spent time with Ruby. The child followed her everywhere, helping with dishes, handing her clothespins, sitting at her feet while Clara mended clothes by the fire. She talked constantly about her mama, about Daisy the bear, about the chickens and the horses, and the way the snow sparkled in morning light. And Clara listened, because she understood perhaps better than anyone what it meant to be a child, desperate for someone to hear her voice. On the fourth evening, Josiah came in from the cold to find Ruby seated at the table bent over a piece of paper. "What's she doing?" he asked, shaking snow from his coat. "Drawing," Clara said from the stove. "I found some old paper and a pencil in the storage room. Hope you don't mind." He didn't answer, just walked over to look at Ruby's work. The drawing was simple 4 stick figures standing in front of a house. One tall one, small one medium, with yellow hair, and one brown shape that was presumably Daisy the bear. "That's you, Daddy," Ruby said, pointing to the tall figure. "And that's me, and that's Miss Clara, and that's Daisy." Josiah's face went very still. "Ruby," he said quietly. "Miss Clara she ain't family. You know that, right?" Ruby's smile faltered. "But she lives here now." "For a little while. Just until—" "Until what?" Ruby's voice rose. "Until she leaves like Mama did. Until everybody leaves. Ruby, I don't want her to leave Daddy." The little girl's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to be alone no more. You're always working and I ain't got nobody to talk to. And Miss Clara, she listens to me, Daddy. She listens like Mama used to." The cabin went silent. Clara stood frozen at the stove, wooden spoon still in hand. Josiah's hands clenched at his sides. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't swallow. Then he knelt down in front of his daughter. "Ruby," he said, and his voice was rough with something that sounded almost like pain. "I ain't trying to make you sad. I don't want you getting attached to someone who might not stay. But what if she does stay? What if she stays forever? That ain't—" He stopped, took a breath. "That ain't something I can promise, baby girl." Ruby's chin trembled. "Can you try?" Josiah looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "I'll try," he whispered into her hair. "I'll try." Over his shoulder, Ruby's eyes met Clara's, and in that moment Clara made a silent promise of her own. She wasn't going to leave this little girl, not without a fight. That night, Clara woke to the sound of crying. Soft, muffled sobs coming from somewhere above her head. The loft. She lay still for a moment listening. The crying didn't stop. Slowly she pushed back the quilt and padded across the cold floor. The ladder creaked as she climbed, and when her head cleared the loft floor she saw Ruby curled in a ball on her small bed, Daisy pressed against her face. "Ruby," Clara whispered. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" The crying stopped. Ruby lifted her head, her face wet with tears. "Miss Clara." "I'm here." Clara climbed the rest of the way up and sat on the edge of the bed. "Bad dream." Ruby nodded, sniffling. "I dreamed about Mama again. You want to tell me about it?" The little girl was quiet for a long moment. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, "She was walking away, in the snow, and I was calling for her, but she wouldn't turn around. She just kept walking until she disappeared." Clara's heart clenched. She reached out and brushed Ruby's tangled hair from her face. "When I was little," Clara said softly, "I used to dream about my mama too. I never knew her. She left me at the orphanage when I was just a baby. But I used to dream about her face even though I'd never seen it." Ruby's eyes widened. "You grew up in an orphanage." "I did. 12 years until I was old enough to work." "Was it scary?" Sometimes. But mostly it was just lonely. Clara took Ruby's small hand in hers. That's how I know what you're feeling, sweetheart. That loneliness. Like there's a hole inside you where something's supposed to be. Ruby clutched her hand tighter. Does it ever go away? Clara thought about the question. Really thought about it. I don't know if it goes away, she said finally. But I think it can get smaller. When you find people who love you. People who stay. Are you going to stay, Miss Clara? The question hung in the cold air of the loft. Clara looked at this little girl with her mother's bare and her father's eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. I want to, she said. More than anything. Ruby was quiet for a moment. Then she lifted Daisy the bear and held her out to Clara. Daisy wants to sleep with you tonight, she said seriously. She told me she'll help you not be lonely. Clara's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. She took the bear gently, holding it against her chest. You sure I know Daisy's special to you? She is. That's why I want you to have her. Ruby yawned, her eyes growing heavy. Just for tonight. So you know someone loves you. Clara couldn't speak. She just nodded, pressing the worn bear against her heart. She stayed until Ruby fell asleep. Then she climbed back down the ladder, Daisy still in her arms, and returned to her small cold room. She sat on the edge of her bed in the darkness, holding a dead woman's bear, and for the first time in 3 years, she let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from loneliness, from something she almost didn't recognize. Hope. Downstairs in the room next to hers, Josiah Mercer sat awake in the dark. He'd heard everything, the crying, the climb up the ladder. Clara's voice soft and steady, telling his daughter about the orphanage, about loneliness, about holes that never quite fill. And he'd heard Ruby's question. Are you going to stay? Miss Clara, and the answer that followed. I want to. More than anything. He'd told himself he brought this woman here for Ruby. Just for Ruby. Someone to cook and clean and keep the child company while he worked. But sitting here in the dark listening to his daughter offer up her mother's bear to a stranger who'd known her less than a week. He wasn't sure anymore. About anything. He rubbed his face with both hands and lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling he'd built with his own hands in the house he'd made for a woman who was gone. Outside, the wind howled across the Montana plains. And somewhere in the next room, a woman he didn't know was holding his daughter's heart in her hands. He should be afraid. He was. But beneath the fear, something else was stirring. Something he'd buried with Clara. No, not Clara. Sarah. His wife's name was Sarah. He'd almost forgotten. And that scared him most of all. The days that followed moved faster than Clara expected. She fell into a rhythm, up before dawn, fire-stoked coffee brewing biscuits in the oven before Josiah's boots hit the floor. She learned how he liked his eggs, how he took his coffee black with no sugar, how he ate in silence but always cleared his plate. She learned other things too. How he paused at the door every morning just for a second, like he was bracing himself to step back into a world that had taken too much from him. How he kept a small photograph tucked inside his Bible, though he never opened the book anymore. How he sometimes stood at the window after Ruby fell asleep, staring out at nothing, his reflection a ghost in the dark glass. But she didn't speak of these things. Not yet. Miss Clara? Ruby's voice broke through her thoughts. Can I help with the bread today? Clara smiled and handed her a ball of dough. You remember what I showed you yesterday? Push and fold, push and fold. That's right, sweetheart, nice and gentle. Ruby worked the dough with serious concentration, her small hands pressing and turning. Flour dusted her nose, her cheeks, the front of her dress. Miss Clara. Did you ever have a daddy? Clara's hands stilled on her own dough. No, sweetheart, I never did. Not even when you were little. Not even then. I grew up with a lot of other children who didn't have mamas or daddies either. Ruby stopped kneading. That sounds real sad. It was sometimes. But we took care of each other. That's what family is, Ruby. It ain't always about blood. Sometimes it's just about showing up. The little girl was quiet for a moment. Then, is that what you're doing? Showing up. Clara looked at her, this fierce, fragile child who'd lost so much and still had room in her heart to hope. I'm trying, Clara said softly. I'm trying real hard. Ruby nodded satisfied and went back to her dough. The kitchen door opened and Josiah stepped inside, stomping snow from his boots. His face was windburned, his coat dusted white. Storm's picking up, he said. Gonna need to bring the horses into the barn. Cattle too if I can round 'em up before nightfall. You need help. The words left Clara's mouth before she could stop them. Josiah looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. You ever worked livestock before? No, but I can learn. He studied her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, not quite approval, but close. Finish up here first, then come to the barn. I'll show you what to do. He was gone before she could respond. Ruby grinned up at her, flour on her teeth. Daddy never lets nobody help with the animals. Is that so? Mama used to sometimes, before. Ruby's smile faded. He stopped letting anybody help after she went away. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and knelt down to Ruby's level. Your daddy's been carrying a lot by himself, hasn't he? Ruby nodded solemnly. He thinks he's got to do everything alone, but he ain't good at asking for help. Mama said that was his worst fault. She sounds like she was a smart woman. She was. Ruby's eyes went distant. She was the smartest person I ever knew. After you. Clara's throat tightened. She pulled the little girl into a hug, flour and all. You're pretty smart yourself, Ruby Mercer. An hour later, Clara made her way to the barn. The wind cut through her thin coat, driving snow sideways into her face. She pushed through the door and found Josiah wrestling with a rope, trying to secure a nervous mare. Easy girl, he murmured. Easy now. The horse stamped and snorted, eyes rolling white. What's wrong with her? Clara asked, moving closer. Storm's got her spooked. She ain't been right since... He stopped, jaw tightening. Sarah used to be the one who calmed her down. They had a connection. Clara approached slowly, hands raised. The mare's nostrils flared. Hey there, Clara said softly. Ain't nobody gonna hurt you. You're safe in here. The horse's ears twitched forward. That's right. Just a storm. Storms pass. Everything passes. She reached out slow and steady and laid her palm against the mare's neck. The animal trembled but didn't pull away. Good girl. That's a good girl. Josiah watched, saying nothing. The rope hung slack in his hands. How'd you do that? He asked finally. Animals know when you're scared. They know when you're lying too. Clara stroked the mare's neck. I just told her the truth. What truth? Clara met his eyes. That storms pass. That she's safe. That someone's here. The silence between them stretched tight as wire. Josiah looked away first. I need to check the fence line, he said abruptly. The cattle are out in the north pasture. If that fence is down, go. I can handle things here. He hesitated. You sure? I'm sure. He grabbed his heavier coat from the hook and headed for the door. Then he stopped, one hand on the frame. Clara. It was the first time he'd used her name without the miss. Yes. Thank you. The words sounded rusty, like they hadn't been used in years. For what you did with Ruby. For... He shook his head. Just thank you. Then he was gone, swallowed by the swirling white. Clara stood in the barn, heart pounding, the mare's warm breath on her shoulder. He'd said her name. Such a small thing. Such a small, enormous thing. The storm raged for 3 days. 3 days of howling wind and driving snow, of huddling by the fire while the world outside disappeared. Josiah came and went, checking on the animals, bringing in firewood, his face grim with exhaustion. Clara kept the cabin running, kept Ruby fed and warm and distracted, told stories about the orphanage, about the cities she'd passed through on her way west, about made-up adventures in far-off lands. And slowly, carefully, she began to fill the silences. "Tell me about Sarah," she said on the second night. Josiah looked up from the harness he was mending. "What?" "Your wife. Ruby talks about her sometimes, but—" Clara kept her eyes on her needlework. "I'd like to know who she was, if you're willing to tell me." The fire crackled. Outside, the wind screamed. "Why?" Josiah asked. "Because she mattered. Because understanding her helps me understand Ruby." Clara paused. "And you?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "She was stubborn as a mule and twice as pretty, had a laugh that could fill up a whole room, couldn't cook worth a damn when I married her, but she learned." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She used to sing while she worked, old hymns mostly. Ruby got her voice from her." "How'd you meet?" "Church social in Helena. She was there with her father, he was a preacher traveling through. She wasn't supposed to talk to any of the young men, but she walked right up to me and said—" He stopped, the smile fading. "She said, 'You look like a man who needs someone to talk to.'" She was right. She was always right. That was the problem. He set down the harness. I ain't an easy man to live with, Clara. Too quiet, too closed off. She used to get so frustrated with me trying to crack me open." "Did she ever manage it?" "Once or twice." His voice dropped. "Mostly when Ruby was born. I held that baby in my arms, and something just broke loose. Sarah was crying, and I was crying, and Ruby was screaming bloody murder, and it was—" He stopped. His jaw worked. "It was the happiest day of my life." Clara set down her sewing. "What happened to her, if you don't mind my asking?" "Childbirth." The word landed like a stone. "She was carrying our second. Baby came too early. Neither of them made it." "Josiah." "I was in town when it happened, selling cattle. She'd told me to go, said she had weeks, yet said the neighbor woman would look after her." His hands clenched on his knees. "I came home and found Ruby sitting on the porch alone, holding that damn bear. She said, 'Mama went to sleep, and she won't wake up.'" Clara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "I buried them together," Josiah said. "Sarah and the baby, on the hill behind the house. There's a willow tree up there she always loved. I'm so sorry." "Don't be. Sorry. Don't change nothing." He stood abruptly, moving toward the window. "I've made my peace with it, much as a man can." "Have you?" He turned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I just—" Clara chose her words carefully. "I see how you look at Ruby sometimes, like you're afraid to hold on too tight, like loving her hurts. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not, but I know what it's like to be afraid of losing people, to keep them at arm's length because getting close feels too dangerous." Josiah's face hardened. "This ain't about you." "No, it ain't. It's about a little girl who thinks her daddy blames her for her mama's death." The words hit like a slap. Josiah recoiled. "That ain't I never—" "She told me." Clara's voice was steady, though her heart hammered. "She thinks if she hadn't asked for a baby brother, Sarah would still be alive. She thinks it's her fault." "My God." Josiah's face went white. "She said that 2 nights ago, in her sleep, she was having a nightmare and she kept saying, 'I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry I asked for a brother.'" Josiah sank back into his chair like a man who'd been shot. He pressed his hands to his face, and for a long moment he didn't move. "I didn't know," he said finally, his voice muffled. "I didn't. How could I not know?" Children hide their hurts, especially from the people they love most. "I have to talk to her. I have to—" "Not tonight. She's asleep. But tomorrow when the storm breaks—" "Tomorrow." He lowered his hands, His eyes were red-rimmed, devastated. "You really think she believes that she killed her mother? I think she's 5 years old and trying to make sense of something that don't make sense. I think she needs her daddy to tell her it wasn't her fault, that he loves her, that nothing in this world could ever change that." Josiah stared at her. "You've known us less than 2 weeks. How do you see all this?" "Because I was Ruby once." Clara met his gaze without flinching. "Alone, scared, convinced that somehow I'd done something to make everyone leave. It took me 20 years to understand that wasn't true. Ruby doesn't have to wait that long." The fire popped and hissed. "Who are you, Clara Hutchins?" Josiah asked quietly. "Nobody special. Just a woman who knows what it's like to be left behind." He studied her face in the firelight. She couldn't read his expression, something between wonder and wariness. "You ain't what I expected," he said finally. "Neither are you." They sat in silence after that, the storm raging outside, something new and fragile building between them. The storm broke on the third morning. Clara woke to silence. No wind, no driving snow, just cold, clean stillness. She dressed quickly and found Josiah already in the kitchen, coffee brewing. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He handed her a cup without being asked. Their fingers brushed, and Clara felt heat rush to her cheeks. "I talked to Ruby," he said. Clara's heart stopped. "Already?" "Woke up early. Found her in the loft staring out the window. I climbed up there and we just talked." He wrapped both hands around his own cup. "You were right. She's been carrying that guilt for 2 years. 2 years, and I never saw it." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That her mama loved her more than anything in this world. That what happened wasn't nobody's fault. Not hers, not mine, not God's. Just one of those terrible things that happen sometimes, no matter how much we wish it wouldn't." "How'd she take it?" "Cried. We both did." He almost smiled. "Then she asked if we could have pancakes for breakfast." Clara laughed a real laugh, surprised out of her. "Sounds about right for a 5-year-old. "I'm making them now. Figured I'd give you a morning off." "You cook?" "Badly, but I'm trying." Something warm spread through Clara's chest. "That's all any of us can do." They made breakfast together, Josiah burning the first batch of pancakes while Clara rescued the second. Ruby came down from the loft with Daisy under her arm, her face puffy from crying but somehow lighter than Clara had ever seen it. "Miss Clara." Ruby ran to hug her. "Daddy says you're staying. He says you can stay forever if you want." Clara looked at Josiah over Ruby's head. He shrugged, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "That's up to Miss Clara," he said. "And we got a long winter ahead still. Lot can change." "But you want her to stay, right, Daddy? You told me so." Josiah's ears went red. I said we'd see." Ruby rolled her eyes in a way that was painfully adult. "That means yes." Clara bit back a smile. "Let's just take it one day at a time, sweetheart. Now sit down and eat your pancakes before they get cold." The day passed in a blur of chores and cleanup, digging out the barn, checking on the cattle, clearing snow from the cabin roof. Clara worked alongside Josiah, learning as she went, her muscles aching, but her heart strangely full. Late in the afternoon, she was in the barn forking hay into the mare's stall when she heard hoofbeats approaching. She set down the pitchfork and moved to the barn door. A rider was coming up the path. A man on a gray horse, moving slow and deliberate through the snow. Something about the way he sat in the saddle made Clara's stomach tighten. Josiah emerged from behind the barn, rifle in hand. Not pointed at the stranger, but ready. "Help you," he called out. The rider reined in his horse and pushed back his hat. He was older, 45, maybe 50, with a weathered face and eyes that calculated everything they touched. "Josiah Mercer," the man said. "Been a while." "Vernon." Josiah's voice went flat. "What brings you out this way?" "Heard you got yourself a woman. Thought I'd come see for myself." Clara stepped out of the barn, and Vernon's gaze swung to her. His eyes widened, then narrowed. "Well, well," he said slowly. "Clara May Hutchins. Last I heard you were working at the Morrison boarding house in St. Louis. Didn't Mrs. Morrison run you out of there for what was it? Stealing from the guests." Clara's blood ran cold. "That's a lie," she said, but her voice shook. "Is it?" Vernon dismounted, his movements easy and unhurried. "That's not what I heard. I heard you were caught with your hands in a gentleman's luggage. I heard Mrs. Morrison gave you 30 minutes to pack your things before she called the sheriff." Josiah stepped forward. "You got proof of any of this?" "Just what I heard, but I figured you'd want to know what kind of woman you're keeping under your roof, especially with a young daughter in the house." Clara's hands trembled. "I never stole anything. That man was a respected businessman, and you're a nobody from nowhere with no family and no references." Vernon smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just looking out for a neighbor, Mercer. Wouldn't want you to get taken advantage of." "Get off my land," Josiah said quietly. Vernon raised his eyebrows. "Pardon. You heard me. Get off my land. Now hold on. You come to my home, insult a woman under my protection, spread gossip you can't prove." Josiah's grip tightened on the rifle. "I ain't gonna ask again." Vernon's smile faded. He looked from Josiah to Clara, then back again. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Mark my words, Mercer. This woman ain't what she seems. And when you find out the truth, don't say I didn't warn you." He mounted his horse and rode away without looking back. Clara stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might faint. "Clara." Josiah's voice was gentle. "Look at me." She couldn't move. "Clara." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "Is any of that true?" "No." The word came out choked. "I mean, I was at the Morrison house. I did leave suddenly, but I never stole anything. The man Vernon mentioned, he was a guest. He came to my room one night, tried to—" She couldn't finish. "I understand." "Mrs. Morrison didn't believe me. He was rich, important. I was just the cook." Clara's voice broke. "She said if I left quietly, she wouldn't press charges. But if I fought it, she'd make sure no one in the state would hire me again." Josiah was quiet for a long moment. "So you ran?" "I ran. Changed my name on the registry. Ended up at the boarding house in Ohio where Mrs. Pendleton found me." Clara's shoulders sagged. "I should have told you. I was scared. Scared you'd send me away before I had a chance to prove myself." "And Vernon. How does he know all this?" "I don't know. I've never seen him before in my life." Josiah stared down the path where Vernon had disappeared. "He's been trying to buy my land for 3 years, he said slowly. "Made offers, threats, even tried to convince the bank to call in my loan. I've held him off, but what? But if he can prove you're not who you say you are, he could use that. Make trouble for me in town, turn people against us." Josiah met her eyes. "You're telling me the truth, all of it?" "All of it, I swear." He nodded once. "Then that's good enough for me." Clara's legs nearly gave out. "You believe me?" "I believe what I've seen. I've seen you work harder than any woman I've ever known. I've seen you love my daughter like she was your own. I've seen you stand in this barn in the cold, doing work you've never done before, without a single complaint." He stepped closer. "I don't know what happened in St. Louis. I don't know who you were before you came here. But I know who you are now, and that's enough." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. Vernon Cobb ain't a man who gives up easy. He'll be back, and next time he'll bring more than just words. I can handle him." "I know you can." Josiah's voice softened. "But you won't have to. Not alone. Not anymore." He reached out slow and careful and rested his hand on her shoulder. Just for a moment. Then he turned and walked back toward the cabin. Clara watched him go, her heart aching with something she couldn't name. Behind her, the mare nickered softly. Somewhere in the distance, Vernon Cobb's horse disappeared over the ridge. And in the cabin, Ruby pressed her face to the window, watching everything, understanding more than either of them knew. 2 weeks passed after Vernon's visit, and Clara began to hope he'd given up. She was wrong. It started small. A look from the woman at the general store when Josiah sent Clara to pick up supplies. A whispered conversation that stopped the moment she walked in. The way the shopkeeper's wife counted Clara's change twice, then checked it again like she expected coins to go missing. Clara pretended not to notice. She kept her head high, paid for what she needed, and walked out without a word. But Ruby noticed. "Why was that lady looking at you funny?" Ruby asked on the ride home. "Some folks just got suspicious natures, sweetheart. Ain't nothing to worry about." "She looked mean." "Maybe she was just having a bad day." Ruby frowned, unconvinced. "Daddy says you can tell a lot about a person by how they treat strangers. That lady didn't treat you very nice." Clara's heart squeezed. "Your daddy's a smart man." "I know." Ruby hugged Daisy tighter. "I told her you were going to be my new mama. She made a face like she'd swallowed a bug." Clara nearly dropped the reins. "You told her what?" "That you were going to be my new mama. Ain't that true?" "Ruby, sweetheart?" Clara struggled for words. "Your daddy and I, we're not married. I'm just here to help take care of you." "But you love us, don't you?" The question hit Clara like a physical blow. She pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face the little girl. "Yes," she said softly. "I love you very much." "And you love Daddy too, I can tell." Clara's face flushed hot. "Ruby, it's okay. Daddy loves you too. He just don't know how to say it yet." Ruby smiled, wise beyond her years. "Mama used to say Daddy's heart was like a stubborn door. Takes a long time to open, but once it does, it don't ever close again." Clara stared at this child who saw everything, understood everything, and somehow still believed in happy endings. "When did you get so smart?" Clara asked. "I was born this way. Mama said so." Clara laughed, but her heart was racing. Love. Was that what this was? She thought about Josiah, the way he'd stood in front of Vernon Rifle, ready defending her honor without hesitation. The way he'd believed her when he had every reason not to. The way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching, with something in his eyes that made her forget how to breathe. Maybe Ruby was right. Maybe they both were. That night after Ruby fell asleep, Clara found Josiah on the porch. He stood with his back to the door, staring up at the stars. The cold was brutal, but he didn't seem to notice. "Mind if I join you?" Clara asked. He glanced back. "Suit yourself." She stepped out beside him, wrapping her shawl tighter against the chill. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Ruby said something today," Clara began. "She says a lot of things." "She said," Clara hesitated. "She said you love me." Josiah went very still. "That's so. She's 5. She probably doesn't know what she's talking about." "Probably not." Another silence. "Josiah, don't." His voice was rough. "Don't ask me something I can't answer." Clara turned to face him. "I ain't asking you for anything. I need to know where I stand. Whether I'm just the hired help or—" "You ain't the hired help." He finally looked at her, and what she saw in his face stole her breath. Pain, longing, fear. "You know that, Clara. You gotta know that." "Then what am I?" He reached up, slow and deliberate, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers trembled. "You're the first person I've really talked to since Sarah died. You're the reason my daughter smiles again. You're—" His voice broke. "You're everything I swore I'd never let myself want again." Clara's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Josiah." He leaned closer. She could feel his breath warm against her skin, could see the struggle written in every line of his face. "I want to kiss you," he said quietly. "God help me, I do." "Then kiss me." His hand cupped her cheek. She closed her eyes, waiting, wanting. And then he pulled away. "I can't." The words fell between them like stones. Clara opened her eyes. Josiah had stepped back. His face shuttered the walls, slamming back into place. "Why?" she whispered. "Because if I kiss you, there ain't no going back. And I'm not." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I'm not ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready." "Josiah." "I watched my wife die, Clara. I held her hand while she bled out in that bed, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do. You don't come back from something like that. You don't just move on. I'm not asking you to forget her. I know you ain't. That's what makes this so hard." He turned away, his shoulders tight with tension. "You deserve a man who can give you his whole heart, not one who's still buried half of it in a grave on that hill." Clara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "You think I don't understand that? You think I haven't been broken too? It ain't the same." "The hell it ain't." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. "I've spent my whole life being left behind. Every single person I've ever cared about has walked away. And now I finally find something real, something worth fighting for. And you want to push me away because you're scared. I ain't scared. You're terrified. I can see it in your eyes." Clara stepped closer. "But guess what, Josiah? So am I. I'm scared out of my mind. But I'm still here. I'm still fighting. Because some things are worth being scared for." He stared at her, his breath coming fast, his jaw tight. "You don't give up, do you?" he said. "Not on things that matter." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Josiah reached out and took her hand. "I can't promise you anything," he said quietly. "I can't promise I'll ever be the man you deserve. But I can promise you this, I ain't going anywhere. And neither are you. Not as long as I've got breath in my body." It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was close. Clara squeezed his hand. "That's enough. For now." He nodded once, gruff and awkward. "It's cold," he said. "You should go inside." "So should you." "I will. In a minute." She let go of his hand and walked back toward the door. At the threshold she paused. "Josiah." "Yeah." "Thank you for telling me the truth." He didn't answer. But when she glanced back, she saw him watching her, his face soft in the starlight. And despite everything, Clara smiled. The trouble came 3 days later. Clara was in the barn mucking out stalls when she heard horses approaching. Multiple horses, moving fast. She set down her pitchfork and walked to the door. 3 riders were coming up the path. Vernon Cobb in front, 2 men she didn't recognize flanking him. They rode with purpose, with menace. Her stomach dropped. "Josiah," she called toward the house. "Josiah." He emerged from the cabin, rifle in hand, Ruby clinging to his leg. "Get inside," he told Ruby. "Lock the door." "But Daddy..." "Now Ruby, go!" The little girl ran back inside. Clara heard the bolt slide home. Vernon and his men reined in their horses at the edge of the yard. "Mercer," Vernon said pleasantly. "Nice day, ain't it? What do you want, Cobb?" "Just come to have a conversation. Brought a couple of witnesses this time." Vernon gestured to the men beside him. "This here's Deputy Marshal Hayes from Helena, and this is Mr. Morrison. I believe you know his wife." Clara's blood turned to ice. Morrison, the boarding house, the man he was here. He'd found her. "Mr. Morrison has some interesting things to say about your house guest," Vernon continued. "Seems she ain't quite as innocent as she claims." Morrison dismounted. He was shorter than Clara remembered, his hair grayer, but those cold eyes were exactly the same. "Miss Hutchins?" he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "I've been looking everywhere for you." My wife was so worried when you disappeared. I didn't disappear. I was thrown out. That's not how I remember it. Morrison turned to Josiah. This woman was employed in my wife's boarding house for 6 months. She was caught stealing from our guests money, jewelry, personal items. We gave her the chance to leave quietly rather than face prosecution. She ran in the middle of the night. That's a lie, Clara said, her voice shaking. Is it? Morrison pulled a piece of paper from his coat. I have here a sworn statement from my wife, witnessed and notarized, detailing everything Miss Hutchins stole, along with a warrant for her arrest. The deputy stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me. No. Josiah stepped between them. You ain't taking her anywhere. Mr. Mercer, I understand this is difficult, but... You understand nothing. Josiah's voice was deadly calm. This woman has been living in my home for a month. She's cared for my daughter. She's worked harder than any hand I've ever hired, and I've never seen her steal so much as a crust of bread. With all due respect, sir, you've known her for a month. I've known her for 6. And in those 6 months, did she ever actually get caught? Did you see her take anything with your own eyes? Morrison hesitated. Well, no, but my wife, your wife, the same woman who'd kick out a girl with no family and no resources rather than admit her husband tried to force himself on her. The yard went silent. Morrison's face went pale, then red. How dare you? She told me everything. Josiah's voice was ice. How you came to her room, how you tried to... He stepped closer and Morrison stumbled back. She was half your age, she had nowhere to go, and you thought that made her easy prey. This is slander. I'll have you arrested for... Go ahead. Arrest me. But you'll have to explain to the deputy here why a respected businessman was sneaking into the servants' quarters in the middle of the night. The deputy looked at Morrison with new eyes. Sir, is there any truth to these allegations? Of course not. She's lying. She's a thief and a liar, and she ain't neither. A new voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned. An older woman was walking up the path wrapped in a heavy coat, her white hair tucked under a plain bonnet. She moved slowly, but there was steel in her spine. Widow Agnes Potter, she announced. I live on the next spread over. Been listening to this nonsense long enough. Vernon's face darkened. This ain't your business, Agnes. The hell it ain't. You're trying to railroad an innocent woman off land that don't belong to you, and you expect me to stay quiet. What do you know about it? I know plenty. Agnes stopped beside Clara and put a hand on her arm. I know this girl here has done nothing but work her fingers to the bone since she arrived. I know she's given Josiah's daughter something to smile about for the first time in 2 years. And I know you've been trying to steal the Mercer land since before Sarah was in the ground. Vernon's eyes flickered. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth and you know it. You want the water rights, always have. And you figured if you could run off whatever woman Josiah brought in, he'd give up and sell. That's ridiculous. Is it? Agnes turned to the deputy. You want to know what kind of man Vernon Cobb is? Ask him about the fire that killed the Hendricks family 3 years back. Ask him why he was the only one with an offer ready the day after they were buried. The deputy's hand moved toward his holster. Mr. Cobb, maybe we should have a conversation. This is absurd. I came here to help. You came here to cause trouble, Josiah said. And I'm done listening to it. Get off my land, all of you, before I do something we'll all regret. Vernon's face twisted with rage. You're making an enemy, Mercer. I made that enemy a long time ago. Difference is, now I ain't alone. He looked at Clara. She looked back. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Something final. Morrison scrambled back onto his horse. Vernon hesitated, his eyes moving from Josiah to Agnes to the deputy. This ain't over, he said quietly. Yeah, Josiah said. It is. The 3 men rode away. The deputy lingered, his expression troubled. I'll be looking into those allegations, he told Vernon's retreating back. About the Hendricks fire, about all of it. Then he too mounted up and rode off. Silence fell over the yard. Agnes patted Clara's arm. "You all right, honey?" Clara realized she was shaking. Yes, I think so." "Good, because that was just the opening act. Vernon don't give up easy. He'll be back, and next time he'll be meaner." "How do you know so much about him?" Agnes's face hardened. "Because 40 years ago I was standing right where you are now. Different man, same tricks. They drove me out of my first marriage, took my land, left me with nothing but the clothes on my back." She smiled grimly. "But I survived. And so will you." Josiah walked over, rifle still in hand. "Agnes, I owe you." "You don't owe me nothing. Just take care of this girl. She's worth fighting for." "I know." Agnes nodded once, then turned and walked back down the path toward her own land. Clara watched her go, still trembling. "Clara," Josiah's voice was gentle. "Come inside. You need to sit down." "I'm fine." "You ain't fine. You're shaking like a leaf." He took her arm, steadying her. "Come on." Inside, Ruby was pressed against the window, her face pale with fear. "Miss Clara." She ran to Clara and threw her arms around her waist. "I was so scared, I thought they were going to take you away." Clara knelt down and held her tight. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I promise." "But that mean man said—" "That mean man was lying. Sometimes people tell lies to get what they want. But your daddy and Agnes, they told the truth. And the truth is stronger than any lie." Ruby's lip trembled. "You promise you won't leave?" Clara looked up at Josiah. He stood in the doorway, watching them, his face soft with something she was afraid to name. "I promise," Clara said. "I'm right here. And I'm staying." That night, after Ruby was asleep, Josiah found Clara by the fire. She was staring into the flames, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. "You should be sleeping," he said. "Can't sleep." He sat down beside her. Not close enough to touch, but closer than he'd ever sat before. "What Morrison said about trying to—" Josiah's jaw tightened. "If I'd known, I would have done more than threaten him." "It wouldn't have changed anything." "Maybe not, but it would have made me feel better." Clara almost smiled. "Violence ain't always the answer." "No, but sometimes it's the only language some men understand." They sat in silence for a while. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said finally. "Ask?" "Why do you believe me? You don't know me. Not really. I could be everything. Morrison said I was. I could be a thief and a liar. Why would you risk your reputation, your daughter's safety, for someone you've known a month?" Josiah was quiet for a long moment. "The night Ruby gave you her bear," he said slowly. "I was listening. From the other room, I heard everything you said to her about the orphanage, about being alone, about looking for somewhere to belong." He turned to face her. "A person who can comfort a grieving child like that, with that much tenderness, that much truth, that ain't a person who steals. That ain't a person who lies. That's a person who's been broken and put herself back together piece by piece because giving up wasn't an option." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I know who you are, Clara Hutchins. I've known since that first night. I was just too scared to admit it. Josiah, I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Clara stopped breathing. "I told myself I'd never say that again." Josiah continued, his voice rough. "After Sarah, I swore I'd close that part of myself off forever. But you—" He shook his head. "You walked into my life with your worn-out boots and your second-hand dress and your heart so damn full of hope, and you wrecked every wall I'd built." "I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. That's what makes it real." He reached out and took her hand. "I can't promise you forever. I don't know what tomorrow's gonna bring. But I can promise you right now. And right now, Clara, right now, I love you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I love you too." Josiah leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. "Then stay," he whispered. "Not for a month. Not for a trial. Stay because you want to. Because this is where you belong." Clara closed her eyes. "I'll stay." His lips brushed hers, soft, tentative, asking permission. She answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper. Years of loneliness, of grief, of longing, all pouring into a single moment of connection. When they finally pulled apart, Josiah's eyes were wet. "Well," he said, his voice unsteady. "Reckon that settles it." Clara laughed through her tears. "Reckon it does." From the loft above, a small voice floated down. "I knew it. I knew you loved each other." Josiah groaned. "Ruby Mercer, you're supposed to be asleep." "I was sleeping, but then I heard talking, and I had to see." Ruby's face appeared over the edge of the loft, grinning from ear to ear. "Does this mean Miss Clara's gonna be my mama for real?" Josiah looked at Clara. Clara looked back at him. "Yeah, sweetheart," Josiah said slowly. "I reckon it does." Ruby squealed with joy and disappeared back into the loft. Clara leaned into Josiah's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his arms wrap around her. She'd spent her whole life looking for a home. She'd finally found one. The days that followed were the happiest Clara had ever known. She woke each morning to Ruby's laughter, to Josiah's quiet smile over breakfast, to the feeling that she finally belonged somewhere. They weren't married yet. Josiah said he wanted to do it proper with a preacher and witnesses and a ring, but it didn't matter. In every way that counted, they were already a family. But happiness, Clara had learned, was a fragile thing. It shattered on a Tuesday morning. Ruby woke up hot to the touch, her cheeks flushed red, her eyes glassy and unfocused. "Daddy," she whimpered. "My head hurts." Clara pressed her hand to Ruby's forehead and felt her stomach drop. "She's burning up." Josiah was at the bedside in seconds. "How bad?" "Bad. We need to get her fever down." They worked together, stripping off Ruby's heavy nightgown, bathing her with cool cloths, forcing sips of water between her cracked lips. But the fever wouldn't break. By noon, Ruby was delirious. "Mama," she called out, thrashing against the blankets. "Mama, where are you?" Clara held her close, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." "I want Mama. I want my real Mama." The words cut like a knife, but Clara didn't let go. "Josiah," she said, her voice breaking. "We need a doctor." "Nearest doctor's in Helena, 3 days' ride." "Then go. I'll stay with her." "I ain't leaving you alone. Not with Vernon still out there. Ruby could die." Clara's voice rose to a scream. "Do you understand that she could die if we don't do something?" Josiah's face went white. For a moment, he looked like a man watching history repeat itself, watching another woman he loved slip away while he stood helpless. Then he grabbed his coat. "Agnes," he said. "I'll get Agnes. She's delivered babies, treated fevers. She'll know what to do. Hurry, please." He was out the door before she finished speaking. Clara turned back to Ruby, smoothing her sweat-soaked hair, murmuring words of comfort she wasn't sure the child could hear. "Hold on, sweetheart. Hold on for me. Your daddy's coming back. We're going to make you better." Ruby's eyes fluttered open. For a moment they were clear. "Miss Clara?" "I'm here, baby." "Am I going to heaven? Like Mama?" Clara's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "No," she said fiercely. "No, you're not going anywhere. You're staying right here with me and your daddy. We're a family now. Remember, families stick together." Ruby smiled weakly. "I'm glad you came, Miss Clara, even if you wasn't the lady in the picture." "Me too, sweetheart, me too." Ruby's eyes closed again. Clara held her and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. Agnes arrived within the hour, Josiah close behind. The old woman took one look at Ruby and started barking orders. Willow bark tea. There's some in my saddlebag. Josiah, get water boiling. Clara, keep those cloths coming. We need to break this fever before nightfall or... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They worked through the afternoon, taking turns holding Ruby, forcing medicine between her lips, changing the cloths when they grew warm. Josiah paced like a caged animal, his hands clenching and unclenching his face, a mask of barely contained terror. This is my fault, he said suddenly. Clara looked up. What? I should have taken her to Helena last month. She had a cough, said her chest hurt. I told myself it was nothing. I was too busy with the cattle, with the land, with... His voice cracked. God, what kind of father am I? Stop it. Clara grabbed his arm. This ain't nobody's fault. Children get sick. It happens. Sarah got sick too, and I wasn't there. I was in town selling cattle, thinking about money, while she was... Josiah. Clara stepped in front of him, forcing him to look at her. You're here now. That's what matters. Ruby needs you strong, not falling apart. Can you do that? He stared at her, his eyes wild with fear. Then he took a breath, and another. Yeah, he said quietly. I can do that. Good. Now go sit with your daughter. Talk to her. Let her know you're here. He nodded and walked to Ruby's bedside. Clara watched him take the little girl's hand, heard him start to speak in a low, steady voice. Agnes appeared beside her. He's lucky to have you, the old woman said. I'm the lucky one. No. Agnes shook her head. That man's been drowning for 2 years. You threw him a rope. Don't underestimate what that means. The fever broke at midnight. Clara was dozing in the chair beside Ruby's bed when she felt a small hand touch her arm. Miss Clara. She jerked awake. Ruby. How do you feel? Thirsty. Clara nearly sobbed with relief. She helped Ruby sit up, held a cup of water to her lips, watched her drink in small, steady sips. Is Daddy here? He's right outside. Want me to get him? Ruby nodded. Clara opened the door and found Josiah sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, his head in his hands. Josiah. He looked up, fear etched in every line of his face. She's awake, Clara said. She's asking for you. The sound that came out of him was half laugh, half sob. He scrambled to his feet and pushed past her into the room. Ruby baby. Hi, Daddy. Josiah fell to his knees beside the bed and gathered his daughter into his arms. His shoulders shook with silent tears. I thought I lost you, he whispered. I thought, I'm okay, Daddy. Miss Clara took care of me. Josiah looked up at Clara, his eyes red and wet. Thank you, he said. Thank you. Clara shook her head. Don't thank me. Thank Agnes. She's the one who knew what to do. I'm thanking both of you. Josiah stood and crossed to Clara, pulling her into his arms. I don't know what I'd do without you. Clara held him tight, feeling his heart pound against hers. You'll never have to find out, she said. The recovery was slow but steady. Ruby grew stronger each day, her appetite returning, her laughter filling the cabin once again. Clara barely left her side, reading stories, playing games, making sure she drank her medicine. Josiah watched them together, and something in his face softened. I've made a decision, he announced one evening over dinner. Clara looked up. What kind of decision? I'm going to town tomorrow, to talk to the preacher. Ruby's eyes went wide. Are you going to get married? If Miss Clara will have me. Clara's fork clattered to her plate. Josiah. I know it's fast. I know there's still trouble with Vernon, but life's too short to wait. He reached across the table and took her hand. I almost lost Ruby. I ain't gonna risk losing you too, not when I can do something about it. But the town people are talking. Let 'em talk. I don't care what anybody thinks. I know who you are. Ruby knows who you are. That's enough. Clara stared at him, her heart pounding. Say yes, Miss Clara. Ruby bounced in her seat. Please say yes. Clara laughed through sudden tears. Yes, of course yes. Josiah grinned, the first real full smile she'd ever seen from him. Then it settled. I'll ride to town first thing in the morning. He never made it. Clara woke to the smell of smoke. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then the smell grew stronger, sharper, and she heard Josiah's voice shouting from outside. Fire, Clara! Get Ruby out now! She was on her feet before her eyes were fully open. She grabbed Ruby from her bed, wrapped a blanket around her, and ran for the door. The barn was engulfed in flames. Horses screamed from inside. Cattle bellowed in the corral, stamping and shoving against the fence. Josiah was running toward the barn, a bucket in each hand. Josiah, no! Clara screamed. The horses! He shouted back. I have to get the horses! He disappeared into the smoke. Clara stood frozen. Ruby clutched against her chest, watching the fire devour everything they'd built. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats, coming from the ridge. She turned and saw riders, 3 of them silhouetted against the flames. Vernon Cobb sat in the center, a torch still smoking in his hand. Evening, Miss Hutchins, he called out. Enjoying the show. Clara's blood ran cold. You did this. Did what? I'm just an innocent bystander. Terrible thing, barn fires. Happen all the time out here. You monster. There are animals in there. Josiah's in there. Is he? Vernon's smile widened. Well, that's unfortunate. Ruby whimpered against Clara's shoulder. Miss Clara, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. It's going to be okay. Is it? Vernon dismounted and walked toward them, his men flanking him. I don't think it is. See, I've been patient. I've tried to do this the civilized way. But Mercer won't sell, and you won't leave, and I'm running out of options. What do you want? What I've always wanted. This land, the water rights, everything the Mercer family stole from me 20 years ago. Stole. What are you talking about? Vernon's face twisted with old rage. Josiah's father and mine were partners once, built this ranch together. But when the money came in, old man Mercer decided he didn't need a partner anymore. Forged some papers, bribed a judge, and suddenly my father had nothing. We lost everything. Our home, our future, our name. That wasn't Josiah's fault. No. But he's got what should have been mine, and I intend to take it back. Vernon stepped closer. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack up whatever you can carry, take that little girl, and disappear. Tonight. And if you ever come back, if you ever tell anyone what happened here, I'll make sure no one ever finds your bodies. Clara's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. No. Vernon blinked. Excuse me. I said no, I ain't leaving. This is my home. These are my people. And I'll die before I let you take that away from me. Vernon stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. You got guts, I'll give you that. Too bad guts don't stop bullets. He drew his pistol. Clara closed her eyes, shielding Ruby with her body. A shot rang out, but no pain came. She opened her eyes and saw Vernon clutching his arm, blood seeping between his fingers. His pistol lay in the dirt. Behind him, Josiah stood at the edge of the firelight, rifle raised, smoke still curling from the barrel. Step away from them, Josiah said. Now. Vernon's men went for their guns. I wouldn't. Another voice from the shadows. Agnes emerged from the darkness, a shotgun leveled at Vernon's companions. I'm old, but I ain't blind. And this scattergun don't require much aim. The men froze. Vernon's face contorted with fury. You're making a mistake, Mercer. I've got connections, money, power. You can't fight me. Watch me. Josiah walked forward, keeping the rifle trained on Vernon's chest. You burned my barn. You threatened my family. You think I'm going to let that slide? It's your word against mine. Is it? A new voice joined the chaos. Deputy Hayes rode into the clearing badge glinting in the firelight. Because from where I'm standing, I just watched you confess to arson and attempted murder in front of 2 witnesses. Vernon went pale. Deputy, you don't understand. I understand plenty. I've been looking into you, Cobb. Into the Hendricks fire. Into a lot of things. Hayes dismounted. Vernon Cobb, you're under arrest. Vernon's men tried to run. Agnes fired a warning shot that sent them scrambling back. On your knees, Hayes ordered. All of you. As the deputy secured the prisoners, Josiah crossed to Clara. Are you hurt? He demanded, his hands running over her arms, her shoulders, her face. I'm fine. We're fine. Clara clutched Ruby tighter. But the barn, the horses... I got them out. All 3. They're spooked but alive. Oh, thank God. Josiah pulled them both into his arms, holding them so tight Clara could barely breathe. I thought I was too late, he said, his voice breaking. I heard Vernon talking, heard what he said to you, and I thought, you weren't too late. You saved us. We saved each other. He pulled back and looked at her, his face streaked with soot and tears. Clara Hutchins, I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to talk to preachers or plan ceremonies. I want you to be my wife. Tonight. Right here. With God and Agnes as our witnesses. Clara stared at him. Josiah? I know it ain't proper. I know it ain't how things are done. But I almost lost you tonight. Both of you. And I don't want another day to pass without you being mine. Ruby tugged at Clara's sleeve. Say yes, Miss Clara. Please say yes. Clara looked at this man, this beautiful broken man, who'd given her everything she'd never dared to hope for. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Agnes stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Well, I ain't a preacher, but I reckon I know the words well enough. Josiah Mercer, do you take this woman to be your wife, to have and to hold for richer or poorer in sickness and in health, till death do you part? Josiah's voice was steady. I do. Clara May Hutchins, do you take this man to be your husband, to have and to hold for richer or poorer in sickness and in health, till death do you part? Clara smiled through her tears. I do. Then by the power of common sense and desperate circumstances, I pronounce you husband and wife. Agnes grinned. You may kiss your bride, Josiah. He did. The kiss tasted like smoke and salt, and something sweeter hope maybe, or redemption, or just the simple miracle of surviving another day. When they pulled apart, Ruby threw herself at them, wrapping her small arms around both their legs. We're a real family now, she cried. For real and forever. Clara knelt down and held her tight. For real and forever, sweetheart. Behind them, Deputy Hayes loaded the prisoners onto horses. Vernon shot one last look of pure hatred at Josiah. This ain't over, he snarled. Yeah, Josiah said quietly. It is. He turned his back on Vernon Cobb and walked toward his family. His wife. His daughter. His home. The barn was gone. The land was scarred. But standing there in the firelight, surrounded by everything that mattered, Josiah Mercer finally understood what his wife, his first wife, had tried to tell him all those years ago. Love wasn't about holding on so tight you suffocated what you cherished. It was about letting go of the fear, and choosing to stay anyway. Clara leaned into his side, Ruby held between them. What happens now? She asked. Josiah looked down at her, at this woman who'd walked into his life with nothing and given him everything. Now, he said, we start over. Together. The weeks after the fire tested everything they had. Josiah worked from before dawn until well past dark, clearing debris, salvaging what he could, planning the new barn. His hands cracked and bled. His back ached. But every morning, he got up and did it again. Clara worked beside him. She learned to swing a hammer to haul timber to mix mortar. Her palms blistered, then calloused. Her muscles screamed. But she never complained, never faltered, never once suggested they give up. Ruby helped too in her own way. She brought water, held nails, sang songs to keep their spirits up. And every night she fell asleep between them, safe and warm and loved. They were building more than a barn. They were building a life. "You don't have to do this, you know," Josiah said one afternoon, watching Clara struggle with a heavy beam. "Do what? Work yourself half to death. This ain't your burden to carry." Clara set down the beam and wiped sweat from her face. "The hell it ain't. I'm your wife, Josiah. Your burdens are my burdens. That's how this works." "I just mean, I know what you mean." She crossed to him and took his face in her calloused hands. "You think I'm too fragile for this, too soft. But I've been working since I was 12 years old. I've survived things that would have broken most people. This—" She gestured at the half-built barn. "This is nothing. This is just hard work. And hard work I can do." Josiah stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "What?" Clara asked. "Nothing. I just—" He shook his head. "I keep thinking I'm gonna wake up and you'll be gone. Like this was all some kind of dream." "I ain't going anywhere." I know that. But sometimes—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "Sometimes I look at you and I can't believe you're real. That you chose this. Chose me." Clara's heart clenched. "Josiah, I ain't fishing for compliments. I just need you to understand something." He took her hands in his. "I spent 2 years thinking I'd never feel anything again. Thinking I'd just go through the motions until I died, and they put me in the ground next to Sarah. And then you showed up and everything changed. Everything changed for me too." "Did it?" His eyes searched hers. "Sometimes I wonder if you settled, if you just needed somewhere to go and I was convenient." "Is that what you think?" "I don't know what I think. I just know that you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm terrified of losing you." Clara pulled him close, pressing her forehead to his chest. "Listen to me," she said fiercely. "I didn't settle. I didn't choose you because you were convenient. I chose you because you're kind and strong and good, because you love your daughter with everything you have, because when I'm with you I feel like I finally matter, like I finally belong somewhere." Josiah's arms tightened around her. "You belong here," he said roughly. "With me, always. Then stop questioning it. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just—" She pulled back and looked up at him. "Just love me, Josiah. That's all I'm asking. Just love me and let me love you back." He kissed her, then hard and desperate, pouring everything he couldn't say into the press of his lips. When they finally broke apart, Ruby was standing 10 feet away, hands on her hips, grinning from ear to ear. "Are you two gonna work or kiss all day?" Josiah laughed, a real laugh, full and free. "Both," he said. "Definitely both." The new barn was finished 3 weeks later. It was smaller than the old one, rougher around the edges, but it was solid. It would hold. And as Clara stood beside Josiah, watching him hammer in the final nail, she felt something settle in her chest. They'd done this. Together. "Looks good," Agnes said, coming up beside them. The old woman had been a constant presence since the fire, bringing food, offering advice, keeping Ruby entertained when Clara and Josiah were too exhausted to think. "Couldn't have done it without you," Josiah said. "Sure you could have. Just would have taken twice as long." Agnes smiled. "Speaking of which, I've got something for you." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Josiah frowned. "What's this?" "Open it." He did. Inside lay a simple gold band worn smooth with age. "That was my grandmother's," Agnes said. "She wore it for 53 years. My grandfather gave it to her the day they married, and she never took it off, not once, until the day she died." She looked at Clara. "I figured it was time it had a new home." Clara's eyes filled with tears. Agnes, we can't. You can, and you will. I ain't got any children, ain't got any grandchildren. When I go, all my things are just gonna sit in that house collecting dust. I'd rather know this ring is being worn by someone who deserves it. Josiah turned the ring over in his palm. Agnes. Don't go getting all weepy on me, Mercer. Just take the damn ring and put it on your wife's finger. He looked at Clara. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Slowly, reverently, he took her hand and slid the ring into place. It fit perfectly. There, Agnes said, her own voice suspiciously thick. Now it's official. Ruby threw herself at Agnes, wrapping her small arms around the old woman's waist. Thank you, Widow Agnes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Agnes laughed and patted Ruby's head. You're welcome, little one. Just promise me you'll take care of these two. Lord knows they need all the help they can get. I promise. That night, after Ruby was asleep and Agnes had gone home, Josiah and Clara sat together on the porch. The ring gleamed on Clara's finger, catching the moonlight. It's beautiful, she said softly. You're beautiful. She smiled. You don't have to flatter me. You've already got me. I ain't flattering. I'm stating facts. Josiah took her hand, running his thumb over the ring. You know what I keep thinking about? What? The day you arrived. Standing there in the snow with your worn-out bag and your second-hand dress, looking like you expected me to send you away. You did try to send me away. I was an idiot. You were scared. Same thing sometimes. He was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking about what would have happened if Ruby hadn't run to you, if she hadn't grabbed onto your dress and begged me to let you stay. You would have put me back on the coach. Probably. And I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. He turned to face her. That little girl saved us both, you know. She saw something in you that I was too blind to see. She saw what she needed to see. A mama. No. Josiah shook his head. She saw the truth. She saw who you really were underneath all the fear and the hurt and the walls you'd built around yourself. Kids are like that. They see right through the nonsense. Clara leaned into his shoulder. She's a special girl. She is. And she's gonna have a special life because of you. Because of us. Because of us. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Josiah, Clara said finally. There's something I need to do. Tomorrow. And I need you to come with me. Anything. What is it? Clara took a deep breath. I want to visit Sarah's grave. Josiah went very still. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. She turned to look at him. She was your wife, Ruby's mother, part of this family, and I've been here for months now, and I feel like I need to pay my respects. To thank her for the life she built here. For the daughter she raised. For, Clara's voice caught, for loving you first. Josiah's eyes glistened in the moonlight. You'd do that. Of course I would. She's part of you, Josiah. Part of Ruby. How could I not want to know her even just a little? He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Yes, you do. You deserve everything good in this world, Josiah Mercer. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you believe that. They climbed the hill together the next morning. Ruby walked between them, holding both their hands. Daisy the bear tucked under her arm as always. The path was steep and winding, but Ruby knew every step by heart. This is where Mama's favorite flowers grow in spring, she said, pointing to a bare patch of earth. And this is where Daddy proposed to her. And this, she stopped. They'd reached the top. 2 wooden crosses stood beneath a willow tree, their branches bare in the winter cold. One cross was larger, the wood weathered by 3 harsh seasons. The other was small, heartbreakingly small. That's Mama, Ruby said quietly. And that's the baby brother I never got to meet. Clara's throat tightened. She knelt down in front of the graves, the cold earth seeping through her dress. "Hello, Sarah," she said softly. "I'm Clara. I've been taking care of your family, your husband, and your beautiful, beautiful daughter." The wind whispered through the willow branches. "I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace you. I could never replace you. You were Josiah's first love. You gave him Ruby. You built this home, this life, everything that matters." Clara's voice trembled. "But I love them. I love them so much it hurts. And I promise I'll take care of them. For as long as I live, I'll take care of them." She reached out and touched the wooden cross, feeling the rough grain beneath her fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for loving them first. Thank you for making them who they are. I'll never forget that. I'll never let them forget you." Behind her, Josiah made a choked sound. She turned and saw him crying, really crying, tears streaming down his face, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Ruby pressed against his leg, her own face wet. "Daddy." He knelt down and gathered her into his arms. "I'm okay, baby girl. I'm okay. These are happy tears." "Happy tears." "Yeah, because—" He looked up at Clara, his eyes overflowing. "Because I finally understand what your mama meant." "What did she mean?" Josiah reached out and took Clara's hand, pulling her into their embrace. "She told me once right before she died that love don't end. It just changes shape. And I didn't believe her. I thought when she was gone everything good would be gone too." He pressed his forehead to Clara's. "But she was right. Love don't end. It found me again. It found us." Ruby squirmed between them, her small voice muffled. "Does this mean we're a real family now? For real and forever?" Clara and Josiah exchanged a look. "Yeah, sweetheart," Clara said. "For real and forever. Can we tell Mama?" "Tell her what?" Ruby wiggled free and turned to face the graves. "Mama!" she shouted at the top of her lungs. "I got a new mama now. Her name is Clara, and she makes the best biscuits, and she sings pretty songs, and she loves Daddy, and she loves me, and—" Ruby paused, catching her breath. "And I think you'd like her, Mama. I think you'd like her a whole lot." The wind picked up, rustling through the willow branches, carrying the scent of snow and pine. And for just a moment, just a heartbeat, Clara could have sworn she heard someone laughing. Soft, musical, full of joy. Then it was gone. Ruby turned back to them smiling. "She heard me," she said confidently. "Mama heard me." Josiah pulled her close. "I'm sure she did, baby girl. I'm sure she did." Spring came early that year. The snow melted, the rivers swelled, and the first green shoots pushed through the frozen earth. Clara watched the world come back to life and felt something bloom inside her too. She was 3 weeks late. She hadn't told Josiah yet, hadn't told anyone. But Agnes noticed everything, and one afternoon while they were hanging laundry together, the old woman fixed Clara with a knowing look. "When are you due?" Clara's heart stuttered. "What?" "Don't play coy with me, girl. I've delivered enough babies to recognize the signs. You've been sick in the mornings, tired in the afternoons, and you keep touching your belly when you think no one's watching." Agnes smiled. "So, when?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I ain't sure yet." "Have you told Josiah?" "No, I'm scared." "Scared of what?" Clara wiped her eyes. His wife died in childbirth. His son never drew a single breath. What if this kills me too? What if I leave him alone again?" Agnes set down the shirt she was folding and took Clara's hands. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "Sarah's death was a tragedy, a terrible, heartbreaking tragedy. But it was also rare. Most women survive childbirth just fine, especially with proper care." She squeezed Clara's fingers. "You're young. You're healthy. You're strong. And this time, you won't be alone on some isolated ranch, with no help for miles. You've got me. You've got the whole town, most of them anyway. And you've got a husband who would walk through fire for you. But what if nothing? You can't live your life afraid of what might happen. All you can do is take care of yourself, trust the people around you, and have faith. Agnes smiled gently. This baby is a gift, Clara. Don't let fear steal the joy of it. Clara took a shaky breath. How do I tell him? With words preferably. Men are dense. You gotta spell things out. That night, Clara waited until Ruby was asleep. She found Josiah on the porch, whittling a piece of wood, a horse she realized for Ruby's birthday next month. Can we talk? She asked. He looked up, setting aside his knife. Everything okay? Yes, I think so. She sat down beside him, her heart pounding. I need to tell you something. Josiah's face went pale. What is it? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. At least I don't think anything's wrong. Clara took his hand and pressed it flat against her belly. Josiah, I think I'm gonna have a baby. He stared at her, then at his hand on her stomach, then back at her face. A baby. His voice came out strangled. You're sure? Pretty sure. Agnes thinks so too. Agnes knows. She figured it out. Before I did, probably. Josiah's hand trembled against her belly. His face was a riot of emotions, joy, terror, hope, grief, all tangled together. Josiah, say something. He swallowed hard. I don't... He pulled his hand away and stood up abruptly, walking to the edge of the porch. Clara's heart sank. Josiah, give me a minute. His voice was rough, strained. Just give me a minute. She watched him grip the railing, his shoulders rigid, his head bowed. I know what you're thinking, she said quietly. You're thinking about Sarah, about the baby you lost. He didn't answer. I'm thinking about it too. I'm terrified, Josiah. I'm terrified that what happened to her will happen to me, that I'll leave you alone again, that Ruby will lose another mother. Still nothing. Clara stood and walked to him, placing her hand on his back. But I ain't Sarah. And this ain't 3 years ago. We've got Agnes, we've got help, we've got each other. She moved to stand beside him, forcing him to look at her. I can't promise you that nothing will go wrong. No one can promise that. But I can promise you that I'll fight. That I'll fight with everything I have to stay with you, to raise this baby to be the wife and mother you both deserve. Josiah's face crumpled. I can't lose you, he choked out. Clara, I can't. You won't. You hear me. You won't. She pulled him into her arms, holding him while he shook with silent tears. I'm so scared, he whispered. I know. Me too. But you're right. You ain't Sarah. And He pulled back, wiping his face. I won't let fear steal this from us. I won't let the past poison the future. You mean that? I mean it. He placed his hand on her belly again, gentle, now reverent. A baby. Our baby. Our baby. A slow smile spread across his face, tentative at first, then brighter, then blazing. We're gonna have a baby, he said. We're gonna have a baby. He laughed and pulled her close, spinning her in a circle. We're gonna have a baby. From inside the cabin, a sleepy voice called out. What's going on? Why is Daddy yelling? Josiah set Clara down and grinned. Ruby, come out here. We've got something to tell you. The little girl appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, Daisy dangling from one hand. What is it? Josiah knelt down in front of her. How would you feel about being a big sister? Ruby's eyes went wide. A big sister, you mean? She looked at Clara, then back at Josiah. Miss Clara's gonna have a baby. That's right, sweetheart. Ruby stared for a long moment, Then she burst into tears. "Ruby." Clara knelt beside her alarmed. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Ruby threw her arms around Clara's neck. "I'm just so happy. I always wanted a brother or sister, and now I'm gonna have one, and we're a real family, and—" She dissolved into sobs, clinging to Clara like she'd never let go. Clara held her tight, tears streaming down her own face. Josiah wrapped his arms around both of them, and for a long moment, they just stayed there. The three of them, soon to be four, holding on to each other in the darkness. "I love you," Clara whispered. "I love you too," Josiah said. "I love you three," Ruby added. They laughed through their tears, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled at the moon. The wedding happened on the first day of summer. A real wedding this time, with a real preacher and real witnesses and flowers in Clara's hair that Ruby had picked herself. The whole town turned out, or at least the parts of the town that mattered. Clara wore a white dress that Agnes had helped her sew, let out at the waist to accommodate her growing belly. She carried wildflowers and walked down the aisle on unsteady legs, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. But then she saw Josiah waiting for her at the altar, tears already streaming down his face, and everything else faded away. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she reached him. "You look terrified." "Same thing sometimes." She laughed, and he laughed, and the preacher cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." The ceremony was short and simple. They exchanged vows, real vows this time, spoken in front of God and everyone who mattered. Josiah's voice cracked 3 times. Clara's cracked 4. And when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in Helena. Ruby threw herself at them, and Agnes dabbed her eyes, and somewhere in the crowd, Deputy Hayes grinned and tipped his hat. Vernon Cobb was in prison awaiting trial for arson and attempted murder. He'd never hurt them again. That night, after the celebration had wound down, and Ruby had finally collapsed from exhaustion, Josiah and Clara sat together on the porch watching the stars. "Mrs. Mercer," Josiah said, testing the words. "Mr. Mercer." "Got a nice ring to it." "It does." He took her hand, running his thumb over Agnes's grandmother's ring, which now shared her finger with a simple gold band. "You know what I've been thinking about?" he asked. "What?" "That day at the depot. When you stepped off the stagecoach, and I took one look at you and thought—" He shook his head. "I thought God was playing a cruel joke on me, sending me the wrong woman when I'd finally worked up the courage to try again. And now I know the truth." He turned to face her, his eyes bright with tears. "You were never the wrong woman, Clara. You were exactly right. I just didn't know it yet." Clara leaned into him, feeling his heart beat against her cheek. "I spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough," she said softly. "Not pretty enough, not important enough, not worth keeping. And then I came here to this frozen piece of nothing in the middle of nowhere, and I found—" "What?" he asked. "What did you find?" Clara smiled and placed his hand on her belly where their child was growing. "Everything," she said. "I found everything." Josiah kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "Welcome home, Clara Mercer," he whispered. And Clara knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. She'd arrived on a stagecoach with nothing but a carpet bag and a lie. She'd leave a legacy, a husband who loved her, a daughter who needed her, a child growing inside her, proof that even broken things could be made whole again. The wrong woman had become the right wife, and that Clara thought was the most beautiful story of all. Thank you for riding with us through this unforgettable tale of second chances, fierce love, and the healing power of family. If Clara and Josiah's story touched your heart, if it made you believe that love can rise from the ashes of loss, go ahead and tap that like button. It lets us know you want more stories like this one. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories and ring that bell so you never miss another heartbeat from the frontier. Because out here in the wild, open spaces where the wind speaks and the stars listen, Love doesn't just survive. It finds a way to bloom.